A brutal assault unleashed against a summer camp for young people.
It felt like a blanket of death had just been laid over the island.
It was a race to solve the mystery of the killer's identity.
They said, "This is the guy." And I said, "It can't be. I know this guy. I went to school with him. It's not him."
An identity that challenged the heart of Norwegian society.
Anders Behring Breivik was white, he was middle class, he was well educated, he was one of us, he was a right-wing extremist, and he killed with cruelty.
The killer claimed his cruelty had a purpose, articulated in a political manifesto. A vision of a Muslim invasion of Europe. A declaration of war unleashed on his own people.
What struck me most was how calm he was, how well-spoken and how polite it was. It was a big contrast to the terrible things he had done.
Leaving a nation desperately seeking the answer to the question, why? 24 miles north of Oslo lies the island of Utøya. Since 1950, it has been owned by the youth wing of the governing Norwegian Labour Party, the AUF. For 60 years, it has been the site of their annual summer camp.
Alt man kunne ønske seg fra både politikk og sosiale ting, sport og masse unge folk, flinke folk. Det var et ferieparadis, og det kommer det til å være bestandig.
Folk sa at det var det beste med AUF. Det var den sommerleiren, hvor det var Norges beste sjekkested, og alle ville garantert få seg kjæreste.
But the camp was also a crucible of Norwegian politics. Leaders of the AUF had gone on to lead Norway, among them the current Prime Minister, Jens Stoltenberg.
I have been there every summer since 1974. For many, many years as a member of the Young Labour Party. And then afterwards I have been there every summer, delivering speeches, taking part in the political discussions at Utøya. So Utøya has been a very important part of my life.
For Eskil Pedersen, the summer of 2011 was supposed to have been a particularly special year.
I was looking forward to this summer camp as the first year when I was the leader of the organization, and we've been working for a long time to make sure that this summer camp would be the best ever, of course.
On the second day, the Norwegian foreign minister visited the camp, an event that was covered by reporters from every major Norwegian television station.
I remember the Minister of Foreign Affairs came in a black car alone, no secretary, nothing. Nobody carrying his suitcase. The sun was shining, it was maybe 27 degrees. People were wearing shorts and swimwear and eating ice creams and just sitting in the sun. It was such an idyllic place.
On the following day, July 22nd, it seemed the worst that would happen was a change in the weather.
Og så det 22. juli, og vi våkner om morgenen til et helt forferdelig regnvær. Altså det var som himmelen bare hadde åpnet seg, og det bare bøtta ned vann fra himmelen. Og det var så vått, og for mange var det kaldt, og folk var helt gjennomvåtte, men det var bare helt sånn elektrisk god stemning.
Og da var det sånn, livet kunne ikke bli bedre, for alt var i orden. Jeg drev på med politikk, og det var det beste.
Mother Utøya, as we called her, who had been manager of the island for many years. I remember she came into the room on the phone and shouting out, "What?" And then she said, "Somebody turn on the radio. There's been an explosion in Oslo."
In the beginning, of course, it was very confusing because it was, first of all, not quite sure whether this was an attack or an accident. Then the police confirmed that this was an attack, a bomb. But it was, a strange thing to be prime minister in a country where we first experienced a devastating attack on the government building, on my office, the place I go every day back and forth into my office, the government building.
A massive 950-kilogram homemade car bomb had exploded at the heart of the government district. The blast had killed 8 people and devastated the tower block that housed the Prime Minister's office. One of the first clues to the identity of the culprit came from security guards watching CCTV cameras of the scene.
Så begynner jo røyken å lette fra noen av kameraene, og jeg begynner å få en del forskjellige synsinntrykk. Jeg ser døde mennesker, jeg ser skada mennesker med blod rennende fra ansiktet. Så ser jeg en person som ligger uten hode. Og hørte en av våre vakter også sa at de trodde at dette har vært en selvmordsbombe, for det jo sånn klassisk tegn at ved selvmordsbombere så skilles hodet og kroppen. Men det så ut så det var fryktelig rart å se.
Kom igjen, trekk unna!
Det første vi tenkte at vi trodde var Al-Qaida, for vi hadde et inntrykk at det var samordnet og at det var større.
Those suspicions began to take ugly shape on Oslo's streets.
Muslims were scared. They were scared of going outside. A woman called me. Her car was stopped just 100 meters, 200 meters from where the actual bomb exploded. And a person opened her door and told her that you should get out of this country now. It was a man, a Somalian man, was beaten by 1 or 2 Norwegians. So there are other stories which we have heard that Muslims experienced in those first 2-3 hours.
The young people on Utøya were struggling to come to terms with the news.
Jeg fikk helt sjokk. Begynte å gråte og ble veldig redd. Skjønte vel kanskje at det var et terrorangrep. Det var så uvirkelig at det skulle skje i Norge.
Journalists were beginning to descend on the scene of the bomb blast.
Vi står så nære som vi får lov til å stå av politiet. De har I
Peter Svar was one of the first reporters on the scene.
De sier at det
It was a complete chaos. The first thing I saw when we came down there was a civilian police officer in the middle of the road. He was holding his hand out like this. There was no barriers, no blocks, nothing like that. It was too early. And he was just stopping traffic with his hand in the middle of the road, and you could see the terror in his face. When the police look scared, that's not a good sign.
Jeg vet ikke hva som har skjedd. Jeg kan ikke si noe, for jeg har ikke vært oppe og sett noe.
Einar Oz found himself in charge of the police response.
Den neste vurderingen var jo hvorvidt vi skulle hermetisere eller forsøke å evakuere Oslo City. Og det vi valgte, det var å evakuere, anmode folk om å forlate Oslo sentrum. Det store problemet var at vi overhodet ikke visste hvem og hva vi sto overfor, hvilke motiv som lå til grunn. Og i den sammenheng så ønsket vi å få folk bort fra gater og offentlige steder, rett og slett for å unngå faren for at flere skulle bli skadd eller drept.
It was a fateful decision. Choosing not to seal off the city also allowed the perpetrator to escape. Just 8 minutes after the blast, a member of the public had called in to report a suspect dressed as a policeman fleeing the scene. The witness even gave the number plate of the getaway car. In the chaos, the information was not immediately followed up. By the time an alert was issued, the perpetrator had already left Oslo, driving north to his next target. On Utøya, the leaders of the AUF had called everyone on the island together.
Og da hadde vi blitt enige med forkant at nå skulle vi bare fyre opp alle grillene og grille alle pølsene og hamburgerne vi hadde, og dele ut godteri og brus, og prøve på en måte å holde roen da, sånn at det ikke skulle bli helt panikk. Og det siste vi sa før vi gikk fra det allmøtet, var jo at vi skulle bare ta det helt med ro. Vi på verdens tryggeste sted, og det ingen steder i hele verden som tryggere enn Utøya, sånn at slapp helt av.
Jeg var lei meg og veldig berørt av det som skjedde i Oslo.
Dette jenteungdomskandidatene våre.
Lara was the younger sister of Bano Rashid, a rising star in the Labour Party youth wing.
Så går jeg ned til teltet, og jeg ber Bano følge meg. Så finner vi en ren og tørr genser til meg. Så følger hun meg til badet, så at jeg kan skifte. Og så spør hun, trenger du meg mer nå? Så sier jeg nei. Så går hun opp tilbake mot storsalen. Jeg sitter her med det bildet, hvor hun vinker til meg og smiler. Hun sa på en måte ha det. Jeg føler vi tok farvel. Store søster og lille søster.
In Oslo, the police had now identified a suspect through the number plate of the car used as a bomb.
It turned out this was a rental company and that the car was rented by a man, Breivik. At that time we couldn't be really sure it was him, but we had some initiative to look for this man, Breivik, of course, because that name was connected with this big crime. Even his criminal record, there was no big things there too, so it was very difficult to spot him as a man who would do such a thing.
Anders Breivik certainly seemed an unlikely terrorist. A 32-year-old Norwegian, raised in an upper-middle-class neighborhood in Oslo. A family friend recalled, he was never difficult, only a kind, shy and sweet little boy.
I get a call on the radio from the mainland. They said that there's a policeman who wants to come across. When we arrived at the landside, I looked up and I saw this policeman. He wasn't wearing a normal police uniform. The base looked a bit like a wetsuit, and he had a bulletproof something and a rifle, a big rifle, and also a handgun on his thigh. The general feeling I got from this guy was that he was a bit moved by the situation. He was a bit nervous. He looked like he was aware of the gravity and severity of what was going on. I noticed that he had this iPod headsets on his ears, and I thought, you know, that's strange. Do the secret police use iPods?
Breivik would later claim he had planned his operation for over 8 years, gathering funds, physical training, and 2 months spent constructing the homemade car bomb. Yet even he admitted to moments of self-doubt about how he would behave when the attack began.
We heard loud noise. It felt like a hammer being slammed into the wall. I think I heard it 3 times. Bang, bang, bang.
Og jeg tenkte bare, fy søren, det mulig liksom? Det noe som tuller med fyrverkeri når det har vært en bombe I Oslo? Det går ikke an. Så jeg ble veldig provosert da. Så jeg løp I retning av lyden og tenkte at dette måtte vi jo få slutt på. Og da når jeg kommer opp på plassen foran kafébygget, altså der hvor øya aller høyest, så møter jeg på en person som kommer løpende I veldig fart mot meg og roper bare snu og løp for livet liksom, det skyting. Og så det på en brøkdel av sekund før jeg rekker å snu meg, så det 2 mennesker rett foran meg som blir skutt.
People started now scrambling, coming this side, running all around and saying, he is shooting people, he's killing people. That's when panic gripped the whole room. We all tried to look for whoever saw any exit. It was a scaffold. Remember, so many people were stepped on. Kept on thinking, these things don't happen in Norway. People don't go around shooting in Norway.
Back in Oslo, the government was still grappling to respond to the bomb attack.
People started to come to my house, and we established in a way the operational center around me and the Prime Minister's office in my house. I also spoke with different members of the government, with the leaders of the opposition, and with the king. To inform them about what had happened in Oslo.
In desperation, a girl on the island called her father, who happened to be a senior police officer in Oslo.
Vi fikk faktisk meldingen om Utøya direkte I stab, fordi det var liaison-offiseren fra Politidirektoratet som fikk inn en samtale fra sin datter som var på Utøya. Da han ba om ordet, jeg så på ansiktsuttrykket at det var alvor. Og vi ble da meddelt at det foregikk skyting, at det skjedde grusomme ting på Utøya, at mennesker ble drept. Og jeg tror faktisk aldri at jeg har tenkt så hardt, så fort noen gang. Brikker falt på plass. Vi la jo fra begynnelsen av til grunn at dette var et angrep på statsforvaltningen, regjeringen. Men da Utøya skjedde, så fikk vi jo også da linken mellom Arbeiderpartiet og AUF.
Delta Force, The country's elite police commandos were instantly dispatched to the island to assist the local police district. But Oslo's police force only had one helicopter, which was not suitable for transporting troops. Delta Force would have to drive.
Det ettermiddag. Det var ganske mye trafikk på tur ut av byen. Og det var regn og ganske glatt på veien. Den gikk så fort som vi kunne kjøre.
But would it be fast enough? On the shore across from the island, a local man had heard the shots and started to film.
Nå skyter de på Utøya. Men hva skjedde med båten? Kjørte over da?
He filmed people fleeing in the only other boat available, an old rowing boat, and other desperate escape attempts.
De har begynt å svømme. Det langt å svømme, altså. De har faktisk begynt å rømme øya. Håper purken kommer snart, da. Hvorfor er det ikke noen sirener eller noe som helst der?
For the next hour, the young people on the island were defenseless.
Så jeg klatret ned fjellet og gjemte meg under en fjellvegg. Og der gjemte jeg meg med 5 andre cirka. Og så lånte jeg mobilen til en gutt og sendte melding til mamma og pappa.
The Rashid family had fled to Norway from Iraq when both sisters were very young.
Vi fikk verste melding som vi har fått i vårt liv. Som kom på meldingen, vi elsker dere overalt på jorda, men det er en som har pistol på Utøya og skyter på oss. Vi kommer og ringer dere når vi er trygge, hilsen Lara og Banu.
Men jeg var jo ikke med Banu. Det bare føltes, jeg var så sikker på at hun skulle overleve.
In Oslo, the police had made a frightening discovery.
Dette politiarbeid, og etter hvert som identiteten ble klar, så ble vi også klar over hva som lå på internett.
The police began studying Breivik's 1,500-page manifesto and accompanying YouTube video. An extraordinarily detailed outline of his planning, preparation, and the justification for his attacks.
Det ble grundig gjennomgått med tanke på, først overfladisk, så grundigere, med tanke på hva vi hadde i vente. Så det foregikk et ganske intenst arbeid i forhold til å finne ut om det kunne være mer på gang i forhold til ondsinnede handlinger.
Near Utøya, local people were scrambling their boats out to rescue those trying to swim to safety. Other young people tried to hide on the rocky shore, where the terrorist stalked them.
Jeg ligger sånn i fosterstilling, og så snur jeg meg opp. Så han står liksom der oppe. Og jeg husker kun en svartkledd person. Jeg husker at han var lys i huden, og han var svartkledd, og at han liksom, alt var svart bortsett fra liksom ansiktet. Jeg ser på han, og så skyter han meg i magen her. Det kan ikke beskrives som noe annet enn at magen eksploderte. Helt utholdelig vondt. Og jeg husker at jeg ropte eller skrek liksom au eller noe. Jeg husker jeg hylte og røyste meg opp og sprang ned mot vannet. Og mens jeg springer, så kjenner jeg at jeg blir truffet i albuen her. så roper jeg, vær så snill, ikke skyt meg, jeg vil ikke dø.
Throughout his manifesto, Breivik accuses left-wing politicians in the Labour Party of conspiring to allow Muslims to take over Norway. His Oslo bomb had targeted the adult leaders. On Utøya, he was killing the Labour Party's leaders of tomorrow. These so-called traitors included Irene Shah, who was just 18. Delta Force had now met the police boat and were journeying across the fjord. A local man caught their progress on film. Believing there might be more than one gunman, Delta had decided to fill the boat with officers. The boat was overloaded, took on water, and eventually stopped. Delta had to be rescued by a local boatman. On the island, Sam Muizi had found a hiding place close to a small pump house.
It is at this moment that I immediately heard a sound somewhere besides these trees. I looked there only to see this man. Immediately, he started shooting. His face, which keeps on coming across, was plain. It was like someone playing with a toy gun. I stopped thinking, and I said my last prayer inside my heart. My head pumped so much, my heart so fast, I lost my senses. I could not even make a decision even of whether to crawl or what. I just stopped. My whole body stopped. I was just waiting for just one thing, a bullet into my head. I realized the same time there was a helicopter up in the air. So I believe it is the helicopter which probably distracted him into not shooting.
But the helicopter was not the police. It was a news crew. They began to film the island. Kids swimming in the water. And the Delta Force, who had finally arrived.
De ser personer på sydspissen av øya. De hører skudd og ser nedslag av prosjektiler i vannet i sørsida på øya.
The police raced to the rocks and spotted the suspect in the trees.
De ser da at han har en uniform på seg. De ser at han har en pistol på hofta. Personen etterkom ikke de ordre som blir ropt. Han fortsetter å gå imot dem. De fortsetter å kommandere, og det er klart at da kommer du til et punkt hvor noe må gjøres. Akkurat samtidig så etterkommer Breivik de ordre som blir ropt. Men det er klart at her var det snakk om tiendedeler, hvor min mannskapet måtte ha foretatt seg og hadde gjort noe.
Incredibly, the terrorist had been captured alive. Breivik's assault on Utøya had lasted over an hour and a quarter. 69 people had died, 15 of them at the pump house.
If police had really come in, no one at that pump house would have died. I would blame it, all the deaths I saw which came later, like that one where I was because of slow reaction from police. That one I strongly believe.
Finally, 8 months after the attacks, the police and Prime Minister apologized for the failures of the response.
Jeg skjønner godt at 1 minutt, 1 sekund, 1 liv alt for mye I denne situasjonen her. Vi gjorde så godt vi kunne for å komme oss til den øya så fort som mulig. Jeg stolt av mannskapene mine I forhold til den jobben de gjorde på den øya.
Now began the job of tending to the wounded and counting the dead.
I actually knew many of those people who have lost their lives. Some of them are old friends, and some of them are or were children of people I have known for many, many years. So it was both as Prime Minister, but also as a colleague, a friend, a human being. I was very much affected both by the bombing of my office in the center of Oslo and of Utøya.
While on the island, the man responsible for the worst attack on Norway since the Second World War was being held for interrogation. His identity would shock the nation.
I went on to Facebook, and someone sent me a link to a Facebook profile, Anders Behring Breivik. And they said, this is the guy. And I said, it can't be. I know this guy. I went to school with him. It's not him. He was a guy that I had known for many years of my life. He was a classmate from secondary school and gymnasium. The shock for me was that someone that I felt wasn't miles apart from in background from myself could have done something like this.
I think that's the most important thing we can learn from the terror of Utøya. Anders Behring Breivik was white, he was middle class, he was well educated, he was one of us, he was a right-wing extremist, and he killed with cruelty. Facing hatred like this and facing act like this is difficult anyway for anybody. And facing it as a part of yourself is difficult. It's difficult for wherever you live to see that some of your own kind can do something like this. It's a part of you. So that's human.
For the survivors and worried parents, gathering at a hotel a short drive up from the shore, Norway's tragedy was far more personal.
This brother, the first thing he does when he comes and sees me is that he says, this is the mobile phone of this guy from our county, and he's dead. Take the phone. It was quite a modern phone, so it was integrated with Facebook, and when someone called, you could see their picture on the phone. And his mother called, and she called, and she called, and she called. And you see this picture of a happy, middle-aged woman. And you know that this is going to ruin her life. And I couldn't take that call. I couldn't answer and say, I think maybe your son is dead. And I had to put it in my pocket. So I knew that every time my pocket vibrated, there was someone who was trying to find out whether this guy was alive or not. And having that phone in the pocket was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Den natten, det var verste vi opplevde. Verste opplevelse for oss begge to. Og for de andre foreldre, de som ikke har fått noe fra hørte ikke noe fra barna sine. Og så jeg hadde mange mødre som trøstet meg. Jeg var ute av kontroll. Hele tiden jeg hørte ikke noe fra barna. Han bare svar, sende SMS til henne, og sende melding, og så muntlig melding. Vær så snill, barna, svar mamma. Mamma er glad i deg, barna. Nei, ingen svar. Kommer ikke noe svar.
Jeg hørte folk snakke til meg, men det var så fjernt. Jeg følte meg som en vegg. Jeg bare så på bussene komme. Og det kom folk av. Folk som skrek, folk som klemte. Folk som gråt. Og det begynte å bli mørkt. Det kom ingen flere busser.
As dawn broke on July the 23rd, Norwegian society had to face the question, why had Breivik turned his guns on his own people?
Første gang jeg møtte han, så hadde jeg veldig mange tanker i hodet mitt. Jeg hadde jo sittet og sett på TV-en hva han hadde gjort. Man forventer seg jo at det kommer et monster og møter en, ikke et menneske. Men det er jo nettopp det gjør. Han ser ut som et menneske, akkurat som deg og meg.
His behavior deepened the mystery.
Det som har gjort sterkest inntrykk på meg som forsvarer, er jo at han brukte en del tid på å fortelle om den første dagen jeg møtte han, var jo et lite sår han selv hadde på fingeren, som han trodde kom fra handlingene på Utøya. Når det gjelder hvorfor han har gjort det, så sier han, selv om det høres vanskelig å forstå ut, at han har gjort det av kjærlighet til sitt eget folk, sier han. Han gjorde det fordi han mener at Norge og Europa vil falle for muslimske ideer.
Much of Breivik's manifesto is borrowed from the writings of others, a compilation of articles condemning Islam and warning of Muslim invasion. Yet within it is a personal section in which Breivik conducts an interview with himself. The interview traces his radicalization to his teenage years in Oslo. He claims that in 2002, he became a founding member of a right-wing terror organization, committed to using violence to expel Muslims from Europe and overthrow political parties which promoted multiculturalism. The rest of his life, he says, was dedicated to that purpose. These assertions are difficult to verify. Many believe the real story may be much more complex. Among them, the police.
He quit high school before his final exam, started several companies, most of them went bankrupt, or they were dealing with illegal matters, like false diplomas. You know, he had no big success with women. To us, he had big ambitions for himself and his life, and they were not fulfilled for him. And that's one of our theories why he became the man he is today.
Breivik had grown up on the west side of Oslo, where the richest of the city's inhabitants live, and the pressure to succeed is intense. But in 2006, at the age of 27, he moved back home to live with his mother because she later told the police his last business went bankrupt. Many of the theories that seek to explain Breivik's radicalization focus on this moment.
I think that is really the turning point. From the police records, it seems like he is locking himself in his room for a year and a half. He starts to wear a face mask inside because he's so scared of bugs and diseases that, you know, he's wearing a face mask in the apartment he shares with his own mum. Just stays in there playing video games or computer games all day and all night. And he does that for such a long time.
Det jo menn I det norske samfunn, og helt sikkert også I Storbritannia, som veldig utilfreds med livet sitt, og leter etter en mening. Kanskje de tapere I det store samfunnet. De føler seg tråkket på, og de leter etter noe de kan brenne for, og noe de kan bli helter I.
A young white man looking for a cause didn't have to look too far. Breivik's alleged personal troubles coincided with a period of mass immigration to Norway. By 2010, a quarter of Oslo's population were immigrants. It was a shock to Norway's traditionally ethnically homogeneous society.
In Oslo, we are getting something we 20 years ago wouldn't have thought of. We are getting a division geographically, where on the east side immigrants live, and in some schools they are 95%. And on the west side, where rich people live and the bourgeois and upper class live, you have none, no immigrants, a totally white society.
Breivik blamed this transformation on the Norwegian Labour Party. And though his position was extreme, he was far from alone in all his ideas. Before leaving his mother's house to carry out the attacks, Breivik emailed his manifesto to people he identified as sympathizers across Europe. More than 1,000 of them. One was Jan Simonsen, a retired leader of the conservative Norwegian Progress Party, now a prolific online blogger.
For jeg fikk denne følelsen at du hadde fått et brev direkte fra djevelen. Altså fra det mørkeste sinnet til et menneske. Det å motta et brev fra helvete ganske sterkt.
But though he denounces Breivik's actions, Simonsen does not condemn all of Breivik's ideas. Far from it.
Så jeg vil nesten si at 90% av det manifestet egentlig hentet fra seriøse kilder. Jeg tror han har bred støtte for en tanke om at Norge før eller siden kommer til å bli et muslimsk land, og at Vest-Europa kommer til å bli islamisert. Det mener jeg selv også.
I'm not so concerned about if he's described as a madman or not. I think we should emphasize on the ideology which he's talking about, how deep it is in our society. He's sitting behind the bars, but his ideology is out there, which we should have a focus on. Because when we live in a multicultural society and we describe some people living in our society as an enemy of our majority of our society, it is a dangerous, very dangerous angling, a very dangerous ideology.
Ironically, Breivik himself may have done more than anyone to undermine that ideology. 3 days after the attack, thousands of Norwegians spontaneously took to the streets in the so-called Rose Rally to express their grief, unity, and abhorrence of Breivik's actions and the worldview that propagated them.
I think that one thing that has happened with the Norwegian society after the 22nd of July is that people have become more tolerant, more careful not to judge people related to which group they are coming from, and being much more careful to underline and to understand that it is always individuals who are responsible for crimes and terrorist attacks. You are not responsible because you are part of an ethnic group. I am not responsible for the crimes or the terrorist acts the terrorists committed the 22nd of July, even if he is a male, white, from Oslo. I am that too, but that doesn't make me a terrorist.
The court will decide if Breivik is insane or not. He believes history will be his final judge. His manifesto declares his attacks mark the beginning of a war which will last for decades. Out of the shadow of Utøya, a different vision of the future is rising to face him.
Noe av det som gjør Norge innmari flott at hele verden representert her. Vi spiser kebab og Grandiosa, vi hører på musikk fra hele verden, vi ser filmer fra hele verden. Vi snakker utrolig mange forskjellige språk. Vi feirer liksom Norge sammen, alle sammen. Og jeg tror at flere må reise seg og si det. Jeg har som en veldig overbevisning nå at jeg har aldri vært mer sikker på at den kampen vi kjemper for et mer rettferdig og tolerant samfunn riktig, og jeg har aldri vært mer sikker på at politisk arbeid så viktig som det nå da.